Your company's legal landscape is evolving, and your contracts are constantly changing. From expiring agreements to new vendors, you need technology that can keep up. Meet Exigent's contract management solution. It's a powerful, adaptable platform for both buy and sell side contracts that can transform the way you work. Because with better data, you can make better decisions. With the solution, you can create a central repository for contracts and other documents, providing visibility into what's happening within contracts across the entire organization. With in-depth insights across industry verticals, you can make better decisions, gain efficiencies, reduce costs, and better manage risk. AI-powered technology auto-extracts data in such a way that users can combine, compare, and visualize legal and financial data to make decisions from information locked within contracts and documents. Easy-to-navigate dashboards provide quick summaries and key milestones that are customizable. Enhanced search functionality within the platform enables users to perform contextual and cognitive searches across full portfolios, with results in seconds. Contract breakdowns can be viewed by country, contract type, or responsible party to quickly slice and dice the data to get the information you need. You can also drill into attributes like expiration date, counterparty, clauses, provisions, and also features a family view, which shows additional documents that are associated with a specific contract and the employees that accessed it. Gaining a greater perspective into your contracts and documents allows your team to bring increased value to your business. Your legal landscape is always changing, so take control of it now and check out contract.
Hi, and a very warm welcome. We would like to welcome you to the Exigent and Manokore webinar, where we will be discussing tools that in-house legal teams can use to become more effective. We have an esteemed panel that will be joining us. Apologies, we may just be having a few technical difficulties with one of our panelists from Manokore Attorneys, so she may join us anytime during the webinar. A very warm welcome to Nwabile, Rico, and Lebo, who Nwabile will introduce very shortly. But before I do start, I really want to take just a moment to really acknowledge, against the backdrop of what is happening in the world today, that we must just take a moment to reflect and a moment of silence for the inhumane treatment of humans across the world. I know South Africa and the sub-Saharan African has been subjected to this for a very long time. We think of our colleagues in the USA, and for the treatment of equality of all human rights, I really would just like to take a moment for all of us to consider and to just have some thoughts for everyone that is not receiving equal treatment. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Nwabile, I see you are back and you've joined us. A very warm welcome. So very firstly, our panelists will focus on two main questions. How can technology enhance an in-house legal team to really find opportunities, or how they can mitigate their risk? And the second question that we'll be focusing on is how they can enhance their legal team. We have a very diverse panel, from in-house legal team to a law firm, as well as representatives from an alternative legal services provider. And Nwabile also brings us her added benefit of having the experience of a company secretary. But before I hand over to her to chair the meeting for us today, I'd like to introduce you and tell you all who Exigent is. Exigent is an alternative legal services and a technology services provider. We are very passionate about transforming the legal services industry through innovative solutions. We have that through our own proprietary technology, as well as utilizing technology of external services provider. We have a multi-skilled team that focuses on really finding business solutions for our clients and not only focusing on some of the legal solutions. We are joined today by Manokore Attorneys. They are a dynamic law firm that is based in Zimbabwe. Their core focus is financial and commercial transactions. They are firmly focused on providing solutions to their clients in the Zimbabwean area, focusing on mergers and acquisitions, but they utilize their local expertise and collaborating with international partners in which they can provide innovative solutions to their clients. They've got a strong regional alliance and as well as an international footprint. I'm hoping Farai would be able to join us very shortly. But without further ado, I will hand over to Nwabile, who will be introducing you to the rest of our panel today. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. Please do send us any questions you may have. We will try and answer it through the webinar. Alternatively, we will come back to you afterwards with some of the answers. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Nwabile Munzara, and I will be your chair for the webinar. As Naomi has said, we've got a very diverse panel today, starting off with Rico Burnett. He is the Global Director at Exigent for Client Innovation. Then we also have Lebo Bumulwana. She is the Head of Legal Risk and Compliance at Hulusani Limited in South Africa. We are still waiting on Farai, who may join us as we proceed with our webinar. She's a partner at Manokore Attorneys in Harare. So already, as you can see, we've embraced the online way of doing things due to the lockdown. Lebo is in South Africa, Naomi is also in South Africa, and Rico is actually in the US. I am here in Harare, and I'm sure a lot of you who've joined us today are in various locations across the globe. So today, as Naomi has said, our panel is going to talk about tools that in-house legal teams can use. So maybe Rico, if you can kick us off with just 1 to 2 minute introduction about yourself, your work, and then we'll dive deep after introductions. Thank you.
Nwabile, thank you so much for that introduction. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Rico Burnett, member of Exigent. I am the auspiciously named Director of Innovation, and before that, I headed up our legal team. I practiced law for 8 years, telecommunications, media, telecoms, and intellectual property, before trying to actually practice, the field of technology and get engaged in that, and not just, draft about it. So I migrated, and transformed or reformed into Exigent and innovation and legal technology about 5 years ago. And my focus on today in what I do is to consult with clients on implementing technology or consulting on their own technology to see how that can fit their corporate strategy and ultimately make them excel, both as legal practitioners and as business people. Yeah, I have 3 kids, and I'm enjoying lockdown very much as a result of that.
Okay, thank you very much, Rico. Just out of curiosity, what time is it where you are?
I was actually lucky, so just to apologize for the correction, I managed to slip out of the States just before they decided to close every airport. So I'm presently in Cape Town, so it's great timing.
Okay, that's fine. All right, thank you very much. So over to you, Lebo, just a quick introduction, and we'll dive deep into it after your introduction.
Sure, thank you, Nwabile. As said, my name is Lebo. I've been a lawyer for 12 years, 8 of which were in-house as an attorney, and the last 4 I have been at Hulusani, which is a listed investment holding company in renewable energy. My areas of specialization is mergers and acquisitions, specifically in mining and now renewable energy. Also a mom of two young girls aged 5 and 3.
Okay, thank you very much. So back to you, Rico. So, you know, with the lockdown, what it has really brought to the fore is the importance of the use of technology. And maybe you can help us to, you know, unpack the reason why you think GCs need to embrace technology. Because there's always that fear that if we introduce too much technology in the office, you know, suddenly I'll wake up and there'll be no job for me left. So why do you think GCs, and here we're saying general counsels, why do they need to embrace technology?
Ngobile, thank you for that question. And it's, you know, my observation, especially in this time of crisis, right, is twofold. The first is because it's almost inevitable, right? That's the kind of doomsday prophet concept of technology. But ultimately, because it has, if you dig through it deep enough, immense power to improve efficiency and to bring about gains. And the reason why I say that is if you just look at the sheer volume of data that a general counsel is expected to connect with today, it is incredible. They are no longer just regarded as a legal advisor. They are required to be a connected part of the broader business. And we can see today that real-time collaboration is so pertinent under this time of lockdown and crisis that will not change. We will see increased requirements to collaborate, not just internally as a GC with their internal teams, but with their stakeholders in the business. And we have to think about the challenge of automation, not confuse that with the ability of technology to transform. And I believe that if, from our experience in working with clients in technology and technology consulting, the GC's role is migrating into one where they need to actively manage and proactively manage risk. Whatever the risk might be, risk is not this, you know, vague concept anymore. The GC's role is becoming one where they are expected to be proactive. Risk cannot simply be mitigated or argued away anymore. And with the tools to monitor risk and to engage with your stakeholders, we can do that. And that's why I say it increases efficiency. I think the risk is there, and that may be a part of a follow-up question. But, you know, I think if we manage technology properly, it will significantly enhance the role of the GC, while yes, fundamentally altering certain parts of what GCs do and how they structure their teams, much like it will law firms of the future. But it is understanding the opportunity which will help us mitigate against the risk and the threat.
Okay, thanks, Rico. I like how you mentioned that GCs have to manage risk, and it's not something that, you know, we can argue away as GCs or push it on to another department. And fortunately here, Lebo is one of her responsibilities is risk. So she's in charge of legal risk and compliance. And maybe coming to you, Lebo, based on what Rico has just said, when you moved from private practice into an in-house role, what was the notable change that you observed, and how did you go on the journey of then looking for a suitable technology solution?
Sure. So I think that, I mean, the biggest change has to be the infrastructure and human resource support. So if you work in a law firm, you've got IT systems that are specifically designed to make your life a lot easier. You know, documents automatically get saved into particular folders. You have entire teams whose job it is to manage knowledge. So at the law firm I was at, they called it the knowledge management team. So if you're looking for something, if you for whatever reason weren't able to find it on the system, then there was a whole host of people who had already organized it and who were always available to come and assist you. So when I moved from private practice now into a small investment holding company, I came as the only lawyer, which meant that there was no support. Whereas at a law firm, all of the systems are designed to make the job of the lawyer easier. When you enter business as a lawyer, your job is really there to support. So the infrastructure isn't there designed specifically for your specific needs alone. So I found that that was quite a huge challenge, because despite the fact that I didn't have as much of the support that I used to have, I certainly was expected to be able to provide advice at the same level of speed and efficiency that would have been expected of someone at a law firm. So I think Rico mentioned it actually. When you are in-house, the expectation is that you are ahead of the issues. You can't really, when you're sitting in a law firm, someone presents an issue to you once it's already happened, but your job as an in-house lawyer, a lot of the time is around risk mitigation. And it becomes incredibly difficult to do your job very well if A, you don't really have proper control over all of your documentation, if it's not organized properly, if it's not accessible to you, and more importantly, if you don't have the time to sit and go through all of the stuff, then you miss critical things. So all of these things, and I think that Rico really did hit the nail on the head, are part of the reasons why it was important for our organization and for myself specifically to look to technology for assistance, so that there's less focus on admin, spending an hour looking for documents, and more focus on really providing substantive advice where you're able to really provide value to the business. So yeah, I think that that's definitely one of the key advantages of this type of technology.
Thanks, Lebo. You said a lot of things that are very familiar to a lot of GCs. When you start out as in-house counsel, you're literally a one-man law firm, and it's tough just adjusting. I remember when I also left private practice, the same experience I went through is exactly the same as yours. It was just myself, and yet I was running a department, and definitely the challenges of giving legal opinions on time and also finding documents is a huge challenge. So back to you, Rico, maybe if you can expand a bit more in terms of the journey at Exigent. You said you were running the legal solutions department. How did you try and then address all of these issues? What were the things that you took into consideration to say, these are the challenges faced by GCs, how can I address them and assist them in providing these solutions?
Yeah, thanks, Nobile. A great question. And I just want to echo what Lebo was saying. I spent some time in-house, secondments and the like in practice. And that really is one of those key frustrations is, in a sense, many GCs have to duplicate the effort that is performed by other GCs in different companies continuously. Because it's really hard to sustain a fundamental knowledge base and a knowledge transfer base if you are pretty much the last one to be invited to the table. In our consulting practice, I spend a lot of time with clients. It's quite often that the GC is not necessarily part of those strategic decisions, right? Because a GC is supposed to read the contracts that they get or don't see from procurement or the sourcing teams or the business development functions. And one of the key things that we realized soon is that GCs hold an incredible amount of knowledge around the business, especially if there's a great continuation of the department, if a GC's been around for a while or if they've got good knowledge transfer policies in place. Which is sometimes lacking in even smaller organizations where the GC might be the only legally trained person in that division. There's no carve out of a risk and a compliance team. There's no tax advisory business. There's no, any of these safeguards or these functions of much larger corporates don't necessarily exist. So in our working, and we started as a legal services practice, right? So we delivered and still do. Outsourced legal support. But through that, you realize that the GC's role is quite different because they have to maintain this annuity understanding of the business. It's not transactional. It's not like, Lebo, it's not like one M&A transaction and then that's filed away and done. You have to remember what happened in every M&A transaction before, and you're expected to understand that. So we realized that the GC's role is quite complex in that they are required to host all of this knowledge, yet they don't have some of the really sophisticated tools that other departments have. You think about the financial team, you think about Pascal or QuickBooks or SAP or Salesforce or the CRM systems that many organizations have and can leverage. Those are fundamentally exist long before a GC is able to put their technology budget together. So we realized then that you need to take the GC's role, understand where the GC can leverage off of the information that sits and is held within other parts of the business for them to be able to sustain that being that continuous source of knowledge. And that's a process that's ongoing, and it's a tough one to solve. And I guess that's why we are here today.
No, thanks, Rico. So I think just looking at the amount of paperwork in any average GC's office, what you're saying is absolutely, relevant in terms of, just trying to piece all that information together, the expectations of the capacity of your own memory in terms of, just recalling transactions, recalling clauses in 100-page contracts that were signed like, 3-4 years ago. So definitely it's a challenge, and technology is there to assist. So maybe we can try and to the Secretariat to open up a poll. We have some few questions. If you are able to open up a poll for the audience to interact with us. And also in the audience, please feel free to send questions, and you can specify who you want to answer the question from the panelists. We're still waiting for our third panelist. Please feel free to answer to type your questions in the question box, and those will be responded to. So our poll is open. Please may you read through it, and then you can select the answer that applies. Okay, so maybe looking at our poll results, Naomi, are you able to share those with us? So 67% say financial impact is the highest priority, and 33% are split between technology, and we also have another 33% risk mitigation and third party and supplier, mitigating risks with those third parties and suppliers. Thank you very much for those results. So maybe coming back to you, Lebo, when you then made the decision to invest in technology, what can you share with some GCs who are on the call to say what your experience has been so far, and how you found the technology to enhance, or what expectations you have that it will enhance the work that you're doing in your office and just improving. So, if you can break it down for us a bit more, from a practical side. Sorry, Lebo, your mic seems to be on mute. No? Could you hear her? No. Secretariat, if you are able to assist, Lebo's mic is not on mute, but we cannot hear her.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. So what I was saying is that for any GC, a large part of our job involves stuff that I put in the admin category. So it's ensuring that for various agreements, particularly your typical business agreements, that you have your escalation clause, when that's going to happen, when agreements need to be terminated, when they need to be renewed. So those are for me the basics, but if you don't get those types of basics right, then a large part of your job is really left begging and pleading with people, trying to negotiate your way out of things. So that was very important to me, that the system that does that I do work with is able to organize that sort of information for me, so that I don't have to spend hours populating an Excel spreadsheet, putting events in my calendar to remind me, that it does so automatically, and that I receive notifications. Another thing, because for me, I'm effectively a one-man show, efficiency was a big deal. So it mattered to me to what extent the onboarding process would require my active participation, whether I'm the one who's required to summarize all the documents and provide them to the system, or whether the team or whether the entity that's doing so is able to do it for me. And that for me was a big draw card, having a team that has legal experts doing the work for me. So they're able to understand the really basic contracts, but also some of the more complex ones, without necessarily, adding it to my to-do list to explain an agreement to them. So I think the expertise of the people behind the system was really important to me. The other thing that was really important to me was the ability to generate reports. So it's great that you have your information summarized on the central repository, but now when I need the information, I need to be able to do it really quickly. I don't want to now spend hours yet again manually collecting information. So the ability of the system to really put stuff into an Excel for me, and it allows me to then customize it for my organization in a manner that matters to them, was quite important. And I think that the other aspect which I found to be quite helpful was the ability to be able to customize the types of information that's relevant to your organization. So I'm able to say, look, in my business, we are concerned about only escalations on or expiry of renewal dates, or because we look at certain prep agreements, I'm interested in reminders about when payments are due, that you do have the capability and the capacity to customize the information in a way that makes sense and in fact is more efficient for you. So for me, I have to say that those are some of the key benefits of this type of system. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have experts on the other side that actually understand those contracts.
So Lebo, you're not a one-man band anymore, are you?
Thankfully, yes.
Strictly speaking, you've got this team of lawyers that's sitting in the back somewhere, and they're doing their part to make you look amazing, and they're helping you, and so yeah.
Absolutely true. But I don't like to tell people that at work. I still like them to believe that I'm doing all this amazing work on my own.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thanks. So maybe just to tie on to what you've said, Rico, if we look at the volumes of documentation and paperwork involved in any average GC's office, how do the services at Exigent just sort of put all of that information together to generate the reports that Lebo is talking about, so that those reports are used? You mentioned earlier that as a GC, as an in-house counsel, you are a business partner. And it's not only about giving legal advice, but also managing risk and also giving relevant advice to the business and sort of anticipating what could come. So how do the systems assist? Here I am with my 50 contracts, or if I'm an in-house counsel in a financial institution, or even in a real estate institution, we have so many lease agreements with various clients. How do those contracts then get put into the system, and how do I then generate the information or the reports that I need from them? Thanks.
Yeah, Mobile, great, a great question. And we joke, Lebo, about assembling teams around you, but ultimately that is always, for almost any GC, just barely enough to manage their expected workflow, right? Their expected data challenge, not even the unexpected, right? We've looked at what is happening post-COVID with the economic situation, and hence I think the poll is pretty accurate. I think if we ask the same question this time last year, probably technology and compliance would have been much higher, but financial risk. And our observation has been that quite frequently, when a GC steps into the role or moves into the role, some of those misconceptions need to be dispelled. And we've seen this across businesses of varying sophistication levels. The notion that all of my agreements follow the same template style. All of my agreements are on my paper and not on the other side's paper. All of my agreements have been drafted with very much the same vigor, because quite often we're expected as a legal function to review and comment. We aren't there at the coal face when the discussion is had, or more specifically when the renewal happens in a year's time or 3 years' time. It's broadly the same terms. We'll go ahead. So what we've really focused on and how we've developed systems and often advise clients on better using their own systems, because we shouldn't forget that we should look at leveraging the technology and the tools that exist inside the business already, right? Lebo mentioned Excel, for example, right? Excel is one of those things where, almost everything is possible if you have the buy-in and the willingness to utilize it. Sadly, there's not much Excel training happening when I was studying law, and I doubt whether it's being taught at that level today. But to build a system, you need to first ask three basic questions. Where's the information housed, and do I in fact have visibility and understanding over that? Because if legal is the custodian of contracts, great. If they actually get those signed agreements from the other functions in the first place. So there's a big challenge in that. So it's the first step is to enable other parts of the business to get the information to you, because you can appoint somebody to phone them every week. We've seen that happen, to chase them for documentation. And this is not even just imagine the rush of a diligence. Yes, then it's all anxiety and people are compelled to work with you. But in the normal course of business, the first step is to set up an easy way for them to really drag and drop documentation. If they're working on a OneDrive or Box, that's easy, but you have to really go to them and hold their hands and explain to them why it's important. Once it's in there, there are two ways to do that. We obviously do a lot of manual review. We provide our outsourced resourcing, for clients in South Africa and all over the world to do that. But the more efficient way is if you want to ask pertinent specific questions, for example, pre-diligence or, compliance with a particular provision of an act, or understanding force majeure specifically. We're talking about COVID-19 response here. Force majeure has become a very hot topic in data analysis at the moment. There are tools out there that you can utilize to go and identify specific things. The search video at the start is an illustration of our product called Scarlet, which is focused on finding a particular clause or a term in an agreement, through technology. But really, that's only possible if you've built that. The phrase data lake is being thrown around quite a lot, but effectively, a data lake is the active container for all of the information that is relevant. There might be signed agreements, they might not. So establishing that is a case of activating a portal for your stakeholders to drop documentation into, assessing your own capacity actually to assess particular parts of that agreement, or deploying technology to do that. Because once you've done that properly and you extract that information, and we'll get to some of those tools towards the end, you can create those predictive models and predictive visualizations that will allow you to positively manage risk. And the final point and the key then is the lake becomes stagnant if you are not continuously refreshing it. The GC really is saddled with that burden to say to the business, if you are signing major agreements or if you anticipate major changes, right? Maybe somebody's flagging an inability to pay, and they might be one of your massive tenants or a landlord, and that impacts on your real estate portfolio. Feed that information to us proactively. So it has to set up those channels where they can simply drag and drop. If you don't do that, unfortunately, there's a limited amount of participation by your stakeholders, and it's again up to the legal team to go and do all of the running, all of the fetching, and all of the management at the end of the day. But there's hope. Thank you.
Thanks, Rico. So definitely, templates, and especially using internal templates when you enter into a contract is always the preferred, way of operating, because you understand the clauses in your standard contracts. It's easier for you as in-house counsel to defend those clauses should anything come up. But as you say, that everyone has their own different templates, so there's need for that shift. And the issue of also locating all of the contracts is quite a big issue, especially where you've had relationships either with suppliers or with service providers for over a decade. Sometimes it's really hard to actually find those contracts. So it's good to know that once all of those agreements eventually, when they are located, can be put in one place, and as GC you can then use other skills to sort of extract other information. I know, as you've said, for sure that the force majeure clauses definitely became pertinent during the lockdown, because people were not able to deliver. How do you then implement, or when does that clause kick in? So we had a huge debate about that amongst ourselves as in-house lawyers here in Harare and I'm sorry, in Zimbabwe. But yeah, it's an evolving situation. So maybe before we come back to you, Rico, on your presentation, Lebo, do you have maybe some parting shots for GCs in terms of so what has the benefit been, what recommendations, and just some really words of encouragement in terms of why as lawyers we should see technology as assisting us and not taking away our work.
Thank you. I think that if you have the benefit of technology, then I think that as a GC, you really get to a position where you're adding value to a business. So what I mean by that is what the Exigent system offers you, as Rico and you have alluded to, is really a team of lawyers as well as a central repository for all of the business's information. And I think that once you have all of the key data about your organization in one place, you have it organized in a way that tells you a story about your organization, then your role as a GC, in addition to risk mitigation, can also help the business to understand itself a little bit better, to understand key problems with the way in which we're negotiating contracts. You're able to track some of the trends that aren't necessarily good for your business, or trends that are in fact really positive for your business. So I think that for some GCs where your job maybe, is maybe regarded as a back office function, I think that with the help of technology, we can play a more strategic role in not just dealing with things that have happened, but beginning to inform how things perhaps should happen in future. And I think that you can really only get to that position where you're able to add that level of value once you understand your own organization, once you have a firm grip on what's binding on your organization, how it affects your organization. So I think that we need to look at technology as something that really frees us up to start thinking more strategically, and to align our insights and talents and ability to retain information and collect information and lend that more to the business so that they use that information for better decision making.
Yeah, so I can also identify with the legal team being seen as a cost center, and I think a lot of our colleagues here would absolutely agree, because they we're not frontline business, so I think what you've said really just helps to make that the contribution of a legal team more anticipatory of what's coming, what kind of risks the business should anticipate, and that sort of thing. So thanks for that. I think that really helps. So before we go into a presentation by Rico, maybe we can run another poll. Secretariat, if you're able to assist us to just bring up our second question on the poll. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to type out your questions in the question box, and then we'll direct them to the panelists. Here is the poll question. Okay, thank you. Maybe we can see the results. So top 3 tools to enhance your team's effectiveness. Definitely document automation is a high one. E-discovery, contract management, then AI and spend and meta management coming up at the bottom there. Thank you for that, Paul. So we can maybe move on to Rico, and then you can take us through your presentation and share with us what you shared recently to the University of Cape Town.
Thank you, Ngobile. And while the moderator just gives me the presenter rights, I think it's fascinating and resonates with what we're about to look at. Actually, it's an interesting poll. So we want to do a really quick session on some tips and tricks about what we are seeing, about this trend and the tools that are going to allow in-house legal teams to function more efficiently. Now, this does not assume that your in-house legal team is inefficient, but it's just a pointer to mention. And quite interestingly, in-house legal teams face the same technological challenges globally. In a recent poll by the American Bar Association, just pre-COVID, in around about August of last year, of the recipients, several thousand members of the bar, more than 52% of them confirmed that they still only use a physical desktop machine to perform their legal services. So you can imagine if 52% of the US legal market needed to shift to a laptop to get to work from home. It is a universal challenge and something that we think is equally applicable all over the world, which is why the tools can be deployed equally, doesn't matter your jurisdiction or your field of expertise. So we're going to touch on a few quick tools here today. And Lebo brilliantly called out the fact that you need the human aspect and the human intervention to make many of this work. And that's one of the real risks. And a quick start, and this really speaks about where we were at pre-COVID, right? There were 3 main problems that we were looking at legal technology to solve, and that the industry was looking at. The first one is task switching or product hopping. 40% of inefficiency in a GC's world is derived from the need to jump between different apps and platforms and tools. You receive an email with a draft of an agreement. You have to download that agreement, open Word, edit the document, add your red line, save a new version, reattach to an email, send the email, get the changes, resave the document, hope you didn't overwrite the first version, save it in a new location. Switching between our normal day-to-day tasks is extremely inefficient. Secondly, from a GC's perspective, the intake and allocation of tasks or projects, as well as gathering feedback and process improvement, is a challenge that many of them have identified. And then finally, the great big problem of data protection remains a challenge, and even more so today. So we'll touch on a few of those, and then broken down into 2 sections. The first is legal technology in a time of crisis. So to be clear, I'm not a salesman for any of these products. This is really a journey to guide you through some of the things you can think about. And as Nobile said at the start, any follow-up questions or comments, we would all be happy to engage with you on those. But the 3 key challenges that has been identified in our time of crisis, COVID and economic disruption, and specifically the working from home scenario, is portability and mobility, sharing and security, and automation and predictive analytics. These are the 3 main buckets that the GC of today should be thinking about when they emerge from our current challenge. So the first really is document management. Lebo referred to, and Hulasani have implemented some pretty sophisticated and some really great tools. If you're looking at the start of your journey, you must look no further than what has been built by the likes of Microsoft in Office 365 and Google Docs. So they've built very secure, very robust document management systems that give you full portability, which means you can migrate from your smartphone to your tablet, to your desktop PC, to your laptop, to your friend's laptop if you had to, if you utilize one of these 2 platforms. So they are both cloud-based, which enables seamless document sharing And the key benefit of these two platforms is they allow version control. So, we can talk all day about version control and the risks of task hopping and about using the non-cloud version. But ultimately, those are the two critical factors if you wanted to have complete document management in a secure environment. Something which has changed drastically for many of us recently has been communication, right? The tools and the tricks that you are using to communicate effectively with your teams and your stakeholders. Now, you might recognize in the far right of that communication block the Zoom logo. We all know that Zoom has expanded in its reach and its capabilities. We can see Slack, which has been a collaboration tool widely used. Two others that I think is worth, especially those of us working in this environment, either in Microsoft or in Google, to be aware of, is the rise of Microsoft Teams. Nearly 80 million people use that tool today for online collaboration, for conference calling, and specifically for document management. Teams is a Microsoft product. But some of you might have noticed a really recent addition to Gmail, which is the ability to have free video conferencing straight from your Gmail email address. So technology has now broken open the ability for a GC to interact with people that aren't necessarily inside their Microsoft environment. They aren't necessarily able to utilize all of these tools, but it is almost certain that Gmail is a part of their or their clients' lives. While yes, security might not be as tight as the likes of Microsoft if you are online collaborating, consider the fact that video conferencing is now effectively free and secure for you and your teams. A useful consideration. But getting into one of the key challenges for specifically GCs in the new normal really is that sharing and security piece. SharePoint, which is the first logo on there, and Microsoft OneDrive now allow us to have central repositories of information that importantly comply with your IT infrastructure. But what we often forget is the next icon, is multi-factor authentication. GCs and legal teams today, inside small and large and sophisticated businesses, are being targeted by unprecedented amounts of phishing scams, malware scams, and hacking. Two-tier authentication, which is available in Microsoft and in Google, allows you to eliminate the challenge even if a hacker has your access to your information. We've seen high-level sophisticated hacks of law firms recently. It is possible to prevent some of that by having this two-tier authentication enabled. And critically, something which I think many GCs are missing today, the little green guy is the logo for PIA, one of the VPN networks out there. What we see now is a big trend for people, even in the legal team, to utilize workstations or laptops at home for both personal and professional activities. They might be checking the news or doing a quick conference call with the family on the same system that they access your central infrastructure. Virtual private networks obviously hide your IP identity and gives you a lot of anonymity online. This reduces drastically the risk you face with document leakage if you've got users that are working from home and users that are toggling between possibly, outside of work applications and in-work applications. Quickly on something that is becoming very important, and that I think listed as the most voted for in our poll, is automation and predictive analytics. Two tools to think about and be aware of is UiPath and Microsoft Flow. They allow for the automation of fundamental processes. So for example, at Exigent, our leave application process, our claims reimbursement processes have all been automated using both of these tools. So to create a low code or a no code, that's the two words being used today, environment is becoming really easy utilizing these types of technologies. And probably the most important is the rise of predictive analytics. If you're a Microsoft user, Power BI might be familiar for you. We built countless analysis products in Power BI and Tableau, which is a different product. But having the ability to take your master data, maybe from your contract management system, maybe from your SharePoint site, maybe from your local C drive, and visualizing the information to do predictive modeling. If I lose 20% of revenue today, what will that mean for me in 2 years? Or give me the top 5 agreements I have where my limitation or liability clause is not sufficient to protect me, or where my force majeure clause does not contain the word epidemic or pandemic. If you visualize that information, it is significantly easier to present a report or a risk analysis to the board. who respond to these visuals a lot more than they typically respond to what a lawyer would draft, a lengthy email, an extended PowerPoint deck. So moving on from those three, and just mindful of everybody's time, and we'll make these available to you, of course, as well. Expanding the impact beyond the time of crisis, three key buckets have emerged. The first is the ability to deal with structured and unstructured data. So many tools in the diligence space, you might be familiar with the likes of Akira and Illuminance. Exigent, I've put us up there because we've been doing a lot of work, and you can see from the first video we showed you that the ability to utilize search functionality is now becoming easier, which means you can search for clauses or provisions inside the host of contracts at great speed, and that empowers the GC to do what they do best, which is commercial decision making. Matter management, Clio and Raven, iManage have been on the market. These are products that allow you to create files, assign them, manage them, and even search for content. Who did I allocate this piece of work to? When did I do it? And so on. And we're jumping through these at a little bit of speed, but I'm sure we can touch back again. Speed of delivery and document automation is going to be key. HotDocs and Contract Express are some of the main providers out there, as is OpenText, which allows you to, through the help with their developers, create a few interesting deliveries. But let me point you to a tool that is called DocAssemble, which is freeware and available online with some Python coding skills. We've helped clients with Python. We have Python development in-house now to create basic document automation through tools like DocAssemble or even inside Microsoft. So the GCF for today doesn't necessarily have to spend money to develop a document automation. Some tools exist today that makes it available to them with just a little bit of coding help. Knowledge management, of course, you might all be familiar with Lexis, Tutor, and Practical Law. The ability to search precedents and to find precedents is becoming critical. As these precedents improve in sophistication, they will become even more important. But something you often miss, I've got the little guy down there, that is the SurveyMonkey logo. SurveyMonkey allows you to integrate seamless surveys and questions whenever you send and receive instructions. This way, when you deliver a piece of work to the board or to your stakeholders, you can gather feedback almost immediately, and you're able to shape the way you engage with your stakeholders in a lot more detail without actually spending a lot more human capital. So just quickly on a slide that gives you some tips on where you should start. The first one is, it's a business question, not just a legal question. Lebo called that out in a part of her presentation. Identify your challenge. That's the first step. Then if you want to engage in tech providers, and Exigent provides that type of support, your panelists here have engaged with that before, the Manokore team are very familiar with that. But when you look at a potential solution to your problem, don't figure cost first. Consider the size of the organization, what support they can give you after you implement, that's critical, and what their level of security is. Cost does not matter if you've got poor security or lack of after implementation support. So once you've done that, that's pretty much where most GCs are, have to stop. But there are more steps. The third step is to establish your context. Who shares your problem internally? Procurement, finance, risk, IP, and how does your potential technology solution to fix your problem fit into the corporate roadmap? Then you have to consider if you have something in-house you can just customize or refigure rather than buying something new. That's important, and that's a critical part of the consultancy we also do. And then finally on the slide, before I jump over, if you want to look at technology and some of the tools you can use, set key performance indicators, not broad goals. Automating my contracting process is not a sufficient goal and will not get you the funding you need to implement legal technology. But something that is effective is to say, I want to decrease the drafting time for my service level agreements by 25% and therefore save $2,000 worth of internal cost. Those measurables are critical in developing a business case and an ROI case for legal technology. And finally, this is a quick tip we've learned both in doing it and in recommending our clients to third-party providers. When you evaluate somebody, have them build you a proof of concept using real information. There's a lot of misinformation out there about tools, and they develop great graphics or fantastic models for you, all based on carefully curated and nicely cleaned up data. Give them some of your own, or find a really rough data set, give them information and tell them, build me a contract management system, build me a visualization, build me a NDA automation tool using my information. And that really cuts out a lot of the misinformation out there. And since we're off time, I will circulate that. This is an illustration of what we've done for some large scale analytics for COVID, and that will be available afterwards. But just to pause there to say, the tools themselves don't matter as much if you don't have the ability to understand the business question and the rationale. And when you evaluate some of this in the slides, consider that problem, consider the challenge of, do I know where my information is? Do I have easy access to the information? And if I do, the ability to automate drafting, to manage your contracts, and ultimately to improve things like clause extraction and even e-discovery becomes a potential business case to take to your board and to your management. So that was a really whirlwind tour of some of the key steps in a post-COVID and a emergency time zone. And I think those would put you on a way to start doing some evaluation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rico. That was very informative, and thank you in advance that you will share the slides with us. I think it's a lot to digest, so we definitely would, be happy to have the slides and then just go through them again, as I'm sure some of our participants try and build up a case of, submitting a request for technology use in the office. Naomi, maybe. Are there any questions that have come through from the participants?
Hi, Nobile. Yes, we had some questions that came through. I think the one was, have we looked at Practice Anywhere and the Empyrean platform? It can facilitate and address some of the challenges that we've mentioned during the webinar.
Okay, that's fine. All right. Thank you. And just to acknowledge that our final panelist, Farai Nyabereka, who is a partner at Manokore Attorneys, has been able to join us. If maybe the Secretariat is able to unmute her, then she can just share with us her thoughts on, what words, especially coming on the back of Rico's presentation, what advice does she have to general counsel or in-house lawyers who are considering implementing technology in their daily functions? Farai, welcome. I'm so glad you could join us, even if it was towards the tail end of our webinar. Over to you.
That's fine. Hello, hi everybody. How are you? Thank you for allowing the time to just share my insights and perspectives coming from private practice with regards to how to integrate technology and legal tech into practices. So I think, to answer your question, I think it's in two parts. Firstly, the question is why us being private practice, why is this a consideration for us? And I think for us, the way that we view technology and how we practice at Manokore Attorneys is that we view it in a way that is really complementary to the way that we work. There's a chemistry in how we view legal services of the future, which is quite sort of the dynamic that Exigent brings into our practice. We also have a very young team, so there's the added bonus of integrating tech into legal practice. Just being able to increase efficiency within the firm, the ability to be able to deploy resources and costs effectively with a quick turnaround for clients. That's an added incentive for us. I think we experience this particularly with our relationship with GCs, that they really appreciate the fact that we're able to get the high volume work out of transactions, which are voluminous and time consuming, and it really allows us to be able to sit down with GCs and to have in-depth conversations so that we focus on the material aspects of transactions, and in turn free up our GCs to be able to have deliberate and concise discussions with their stakeholders, just in terms of what are all the aspects and where the function then evolves more from being a compliance on a firm who walk into how they can add value and demonstrate that meaningfully. So I think my recommendation is just for all the GCs that are out there and they're considering how to integrate tech or adoption of or engagement with alternative legal service providers, is that they're really not to be viewed as adversaries, but rather their eyes in what your KPIs are. And I say that in the sense that I think the first step is just to take it, not to do holistic change, but then it has to be bite-sizable and then take an incremental adoption into how those functions could work for you as an organization. Obviously tailor-made and adaptable as to when you see the needs, but the rollout phase is comfortable and for change management as well. Those are just my questions, Nobile. Thank you.
Thanks, Farai. Thank you so much. We're really glad you were able to join us because, you know, it is through the Manokore Attorneys relationship that, you know, we're able to access, you know, global partners such as Exigent, and we really appreciate you for that. So I think if maybe we can, if I can ask my panelists, any last parting shots, either from you, Rico or Lebo, before I hand back to Naomi. Okay, that's fine. I think my job is done. It's been a great afternoon, and thank you all for your participation. So over back to you, Naomi.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. You were absolutely brilliant. We enjoyed your insights and facilitating the session. Despite some of our technical challenges, we were able to get Farai with some of her parting words, and we really appreciate that. I would just like to thank everyone that has joined today. We appreciate you. We wish we could see you and that we could be part of you, but COVID has really highlighted a number of words. Either I can't hear you, you're on mute, or the internet is not working, but we are surviving. And if any of you would like to discuss any of the solutions or any of the opportunities that Rico or Lebo or Nwabile has mentioned, please do reach out either to myself at Exigent or to Farai at Manokore Attorneys. And with that, I'd really like to wish you a wonderful afternoon ahead. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.